Hook, English, powerful plus suspenseful plus emotional plus curiosity-driven. A billionaire CEO stops his car when his little daughter shouts, "Daddy, her baby is freezing." But what happens next changes all their lives forever. A single night of snow, a desperate mother, and a decision that reveals the true meaning of love and humanity. Watch till the end, because sometimes saving a stranger can save your soul. Snowflakes fell like tiny shards of glass against the car window. The city lights blurred in the frost, glowing gold and cold through the night haze. Inside the black SUV, the heater hummed softly, wrapping warmth around a small girl in a pink coat. Her father, Ethan Cole, CEO of a major firm, gripped the steering wheel, his mind lost in the fog of deadlines and board meetings. The soft hum of traffic was broken by a small voice. "Daddy, her baby is freezing." Ethan blinked, startled. He turned to where his daughter, Lily, pointed through the fogged window. On the corner, beneath a flickering street lamp, a young woman sat hunched over, wrapped in a torn blanket. In her trembling arms, a baby no older than 6 months whimpered softly, his cheeks red from the biting wind. Ethan's chest tightened. He felt the world pause around him, the sound of the city fading into silence. The mother's lips were pale. Her eyes moved, searching the passing cars, but no one stopped. Ethan's hands began to shake. He reached for the door handle, but hesitated. His mind screamed logic. He was not supposed to get involved. But his heart saw his late wife's face in that woman's broken expression. Lily's small hand touched his arm. "Daddy, please. She needs help." Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the sting of cold air rush into his lungs as he stepped out. The snow crunched under his shoes. The wind hit his face like needles, sharp and real. He approached slowly, his breath visible in the freezing air. The woman looked up, startled, fear flickering in her eyes. "It is all right," he said softly, kneeling beside her. Her fingers were blue from the cold, clutching the baby's tiny blanket tighter. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. He is so cold." Ethan unzipped his coat and wrapped it around the baby without thinking. The baby's faint cry pierced through the night like a small alarm bell. Lily rushed over, holding her pink mittens toward the woman. "Here," she said, voice trembling but brave. "They are warm." The woman blinked back tears as she slipped the mittens on, her hands shaking. Ethan felt something stir deep inside him, a memory of a night years ago, where his wife had done the same for a stranger. The snow fell heavier now. The street lamp flickered, casting the three of them in a halo of dim, golden light. Ethan looked at the baby again, tiny chest rising weakly, eyes half open. His pulse quickened. This was no longer charity. It was survival. He scooped the woman and her baby into the car, the warmth swallowing them instantly. Lily sat close, holding the baby's tiny hand with her mitten one. Ethan started the engine, heart pounding. The woman stared at him, disbelief and relief mixing in her eyes. "Why are you helping us?" she asked softly. Ethan looked ahead at the road, a blur of snow and light. "Because," he said quietly, "someone once helped me when I thought my world was over." Outside, the storm howled louder. But inside the car, for the first time that night, there was silence. A silence filled not with fear, but with something else. Something fragile. Something alive. Something that was about to change all of their lives forever. Ethan drove through the storm, the wipers sweeping the glass in slow, rhythmic arcs. Each sound, the hiss of the heater, the muffled hum of the tires, seemed louder in the quiet. The woman held her baby close, her arms trembling less now, the color returning faintly to her cheeks. Lily watched her with wide eyes, protective and curious, as if she understood that something fragile was happening in the back seat. Ethan's mind raced. Every turn of the wheel felt heavier than the last. He was a man who made decisions worth millions in a single meeting, but this was something else entirely. "What is your name?" he asked, keeping his voice low. The woman hesitated, her gaze flicking toward him, uncertain. "Grace," she whispered finally. "My name is Grace." Ethan nodded. The name fit her, soft but strong underneath. "And your baby?" he asked. "Michael," she said. "He is 6 months old." Lily leaned forward. "He is really cute," she said, smiling shyly. "Does he like snow?" Grace let out a faint, breathy laugh, the first sound of warmth Ethan had heard from her. "I think he is trying to decide," she said, brushing the baby's hair gently. Ethan glanced at them through the rearview mirror. Her clothes were soaked, her boots thin, and her eyes, tired, hollow, but full of quiet determination. He cleared his throat. "There's a hospital about 10 minutes away," he said. "They will check the baby." Grace nodded quickly, clutching the coat tighter around her child. "Thank you," she murmured. I did not know what else to do. We were at the shelter, but it closed early tonight. There was no room left." Her words hung in the air like frost. Ethan's stomach twisted. He looked out the window, the city blurring by in streaks of gray and gold. The world outside his car, the world he usually drove past without seeing, suddenly felt raw and real. When they reached the hospital, Ethan pulled up to the emergency entrance. He jumped out and ran to the passenger side, opening the door for Grace. The warmth of the hospital lights spilled onto the snow. A nurse hurried over, her expression softening when she saw the baby. "Bring him inside," she said quickly. "We will take care of him." Grace clung to the baby as the nurse led them through the automatic doors. Ethan followed, holding Lily's hand. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet urgency. Machines beeped in the distance, and voices echoed softly in the sterile halls. They were taken into a small exam room where the baby was gently laid on a heated table. Another nurse checked his temperature, wrapped him in warm blankets, and smiled reassuringly. "He will be all right," she said. "He just needs warmth and rest." Grace's shoulders dropped in relief. Tears welled in her eyes, glimmering under the harsh fluorescent light. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Lily tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Daddy," she said softly, "can Grace and the baby stay with us until they are okay?" Ethan blinked, caught off guard. He looked at Grace, her exhaustion, her quiet dignity. He looked at his daughter, her innocent compassion shining through. His throat tightened. "We will figure something out," he said finally, his voice gentle. Grace looked down, unsure how to respond. Hours passed. The storm outside grew stronger, the wind whistling against the hospital windows. Grace sat beside the baby's bed, humming softly as he slept, his tiny hand curled around her finger. Ethan stood by the doorway, watching. There was something in the way she looked at her child, fierce love mixed with fear, that reminded him of his own nights spent awake with Lily after his wife's passing. He remembered the loneliness, the long hours of silence that followed laughter that would never return. He took a deep breath and stepped closer. "You can rest if you need to," he said quietly. "The nurses will keep an eye on him." Grace shook her head. "I cannot," she said. "If I close my eyes, I will wake up and it will all be gone again." Ethan said nothing. He understood that feeling, the fear of losing the little that remained. Lily sat next to her and handed her a small chocolate bar from her pocket. "My teacher says sweet things make hard things easier," she said. Grace smiled faintly, accepting it. "Your teacher is very wise." Lily nodded proudly. "She is, but my daddy is wiser. He always helps people, even when they do not ask." Ethan froze for a moment, feeling her words settle deep inside him. He had spent years avoiding the world beyond his company, building walls of schedules, meetings, and polite distance. Now, in this quiet room with the scent of antiseptic and hope, those walls began to crumble. Later that night, when the baby was declared stable, Grace sat with Ethan in the small waiting area. Snow drifted past the tall windows, soft and endless. "Why did you stop?" she asked after a long silence. Ethan stared at the snow for a moment. "Because my daughter saw you," he said, "and I saw something in your eyes I could not ignore." Grace looked down at her hands. "I was not always like this," she said quietly. "I had a job, an apartment, a life. Then the company I worked for shut down. The rent went up, and everything else just followed." Ethan listened, guilt washing over him like a tide. He knew those stories, The people behind numbers on reports, behind layoffs he had signed without ever meeting them. He never imagined what one of those signatures might feel like from the other side. "I am sorry," he said softly, "for everything you had to go through." Grace shook her head. "You have already done enough," she said. "You stopped. That is more than most." The words hit him harder than he expected. He turned to see Lily asleep on a chair, her small hand clutching her pink mittens. Outside, the wind howled again, but inside, warmth lingered. Hours turned into dawn. The storm had passed, leaving the city wrapped in white silence. The first rays of sunlight spilled through the window, painting the floor in pale gold. Grace stood near the window, holding Michael, who was now sleeping peacefully. Ethan approached quietly. "You have nowhere to go, do you?" he asked gently. She hesitated. "No," she admitted. "I will go back to the shelter when it opens. They said maybe next week there will be space." Ethan looked at her, then at his daughter, then at the world outside, glittering but cold. "Come with us," he said finally. Grace turned, startled. "I cannot," she said quickly. "You have already done so much." "This is not charity," Ethan said. "It is a chance. For you, for your baby, and maybe for us too." She stared at him, searching for the truth behind his words. And she found it, quiet, steady, and real. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she nodded. When they stepped outside, the air was sharp but bright. The city, blanketed in snow, looked almost new. Lily ran ahead, her laughter echoing through the cold morning air. Grace followed, holding Michael close, the warmth of the rising sun touching her face. Ethan watched them, a strange peace settling over him. He did not know what would come next, but for the first time in years, he felt alive. Behind them, the hospital doors closed, leaving behind the night that had changed everything. And as they walked toward the car, three souls bound by chance, by kindness, by a fragile spark of hope, the city began to wake. The air shimmered with the promise of something new. Not wealth, not status, but redemption, and the quiet, unstoppable strength of a little girl's voice that had said, "Daddy, her baby is freezing." Ethan drove slowly through the quiet morning streets, the tires pressing soft tracks into the new snow. Sunlight shimmered against frozen rooftops, the whole city glistening like crystal. For a while, no one spoke. The silence inside the car was calm, no longer heavy with fear or tension, just the stillness that follows a storm. Lily hummed softly in the back seat, tracing little hearts on the fogged window with her fingertip. Grace sat beside her, holding Michael, who was wrapped snugly in Ethan's coat and fast asleep. Ethan glanced at them through the rearview mirror, the warmth of a faint smile touching his face. He could not remember the last time his car had carried something other than business files and silence. The air felt lighter now, alive. "Are you sure this is okay?" Grace asked quietly. Her voice held that mix of gratitude and doubt that comes from too many disappointments. Ethan nodded. "You're safe," he said. "That is all that matters today." Grace's eyes softened, though uncertainty still lingered in their corners. They drove past rows of empty shops, snow piled high along the sidewalks. The world was hushed, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Lily suddenly gasped and pointed toward a small cafe with fogged-up windows. "Daddy, look, they are open." Ethan slowed the car. A neon sign blinked Morning Brew Cafe, and inside, a few people sat with steaming mugs and tired eyes. He parked and turned to Grace. "You must be hungry," he said. Grace hesitated, but then nodded, her cheeks flushed from the cold. Inside, the warmth hit them instantly, the smell of coffee, fresh bread, and cinnamon wrapping around them like a blanket. Lily's boots squeaked on the floor as she rushed to a corner booth. Grace followed slowly, still unsure how to act in a place she had not been welcome in for a long time. Ethan ordered hot chocolate for Lily, coffee for himself, and soup and toast for Grace. When a steaming bowl arrived, Grace stared at it as if it were something sacred. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted the spoon. "It has been a long time since I had a warm meal," she said softly. Lily leaned over the table. "My daddy makes the best pancakes at home," she said proudly. "You can have some if you stay with us." Grace looked up, surprised, her eyes glistening. Ethan cleared his throat, smiling faintly. "I do not make the best pancakes," he said. "They are usually a disaster." Lily giggled. "But you try. That is what makes them good." The sound of her laughter seemed to break something open inside all three of them. Grace smiled, a real one this time, the kind that reached her eyes. As they ate, Ethan found himself watching her without meaning to. There was a quiet strength in her movements, a gentleness when she adjusted the baby's blanket, a resilience that seemed to glow even in exhaustion. He wondered how many nights she had spent outside in the cold, how many times she had told herself she could make it one more day. And he wondered what would have happened if Lily had not seen her. That thought sent a chill down his spine. After breakfast, they stepped back into the sunlight. The snow sparkled, and the air was crisp but bright. Ethan opened the car door for Grace, but she paused before getting in. "You really do not have to do all this," she said quietly. "You have your own life." Ethan looked at her, his breath visible in the cold. "Maybe that is the problem," he said. "It was only my life. It has been a long time since I shared it with anyone." Grace said nothing. She just watched him, the morning light reflected in her tired but kind eyes. When they reached Ethan's house, the tall iron gates opened automatically. Grace's eyes widened as the car rolled up a long driveway lined with frost-covered trees. The house stood at the top, large, elegant, and silent. Lily ran ahead the moment the door opened, calling for the family's golden retriever. A cheerful bark echoed as the dog bounded toward her, tail wagging furiously. Grace stepped inside slowly, holding the baby close. The warmth of the house enveloped her, the scent of pine wood, faint perfume, and something familiar yet distant. Ethan noticed her hesitation. "You can stay here until you are ready," he said gently. "There are guest rooms upstairs." Grace shook her head slightly. "I do not want to cause trouble," she said. "This is not trouble," Ethan replied. "It is the right thing to do." Lily came back, laughing as the dog nudged her. "Come see the fireplace," she said, tugging Grace's hand. "It is warm and smells like cookies." Grace followed her to the living room, where the fire crackled softly in the hearth. She sat down carefully, letting the warmth sink into her bones. Michael stirred, then sighed contently against her chest. For a moment, the world felt still. Ethan watched them from the doorway, the flickering light painting soft shadows across the room. Something deep inside him shifted. He had filled this house with everything money could buy: art, furniture, silence, but not life. Now it felt alive again. Days passed. Grace and Michael settled into the rhythm of the house. Lily adored helping with the baby, reading him stories, showing him her drawings, whispering secrets as if he could understand. Grace began to smile more. She helped in the kitchen, folded laundry, even cooked dinner one night, a simple stew that filled the house with warmth. Ethan returned from work early that evening, drawn by the smell and laughter he had not heard in years. At the table, Lily and Grace sat side by side, Michael sleeping in his basket nearby. Lily waved him over. "Daddy, taste it." Grace cooked it. He sat down, surprised. The food was warm, hearty, and perfectly seasoned. Grace looked embarrassed. "It is just something I used to make at home." Ethan smiled. "It tastes like home." For the first time in years, dinner did not feel like a routine. It felt like belonging. Later that night, after Lily went to bed, Grace stood by the window, watching snowflakes drift through the glow of the garden lights. Ethan approached quietly. "You were thinking about leaving," he said softly. She nodded. "I do not want to overstay," she said. "You have done enough." He hesitated before speaking. "Grace, you saved something too," he said. "You reminded me that this house was never meant to be empty, that people matter more than plans." She turned toward him, the firelight reflecting in her eyes. "I lost everything," she whispered. "And now, I do not know how to start again." "Then start here," Ethan said. "Not as someone I helped, but as someone who belongs." The silence stretched between them, gentle but powerful. Grace's eyes filled with tears she did not try to hide. Outside, the snow continued to fall, silent and endless. The next morning, Lily woke up early and found Grace in the kitchen making breakfast. She ran to Ethan's room, shouting with excitement, "Daddy, Grace is making pancakes. Real ones. Ethan laughed, sitting up. Then I guess we better not burn them this time. The three of them gathered in the kitchen, laughter mixing with the smell of warm batter and syrup. Michael gurgled in his baby's seat, waving his hands. Ethan looked around, at his daughter's smile, at Grace's calm presence, at the light streaming through the window, and realized something profound. He had been living surrounded by comfort, yet completely alone. Now, with nothing planned, nothing expected, his house was full again. Spring arrived gently that year. The city, once blanketed in snow, now bloomed with color. Cherry blossoms lined the streets near Ethan's home, their petals fluttering like soft whispers in the breeze. Inside the house, laughter carried from the garden. Lily chased the golden retriever through the grass, her shoes splashing in tiny puddles left by morning rain. Grace sat nearby, her hair loose in the sunlight, holding Michael as he reached out to catch falling petals. Ethan stood by the porch, coffee in hand, watching the scene unfold. A picture so peaceful it almost felt unreal. There was a time when silence had filled this house like a shadow. Now it was filled with voices, warmth, and the simple rhythm of life. Grace looked up and met his eyes, smiling. "He loves the flowers," she said softly. "Every time they fall, he laughs." Ethan stepped closer, smiling back. "Then we will plant more next year," he said. "As many as he wants." The baby squealed as Lily came running over, her cheeks pink with excitement. "Daddy, can we have a picnic?" Grace made sandwiches. Ethan laughed. "Then it is officially a picnic day." They spread a blanket under the blooming tree, the air filled with the scent of earth and sunlight. Lily shared cookies with Grace, crumbs dusting her small fingers. Michael babbled happily, tugging at Ethan's sleeve. And for a long while, no one spoke. There was no need. The silence between them was full, not empty. Grace looked around the garden, her voice quiet but sure. "It still feels strange," she said, "to wake up and not be afraid." Ethan nodded. "Fear fades when you stop facing the world alone," he said. She smiled, eyes glistening. "I never thought I would find something like this again." He looked at her, the sunlight catching the edge of her hair. "Sometimes," he said softly, "life gives back what it once took, just in a different form." Grace reached over, touching his hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for stopping that night, for seeing us." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "I should be the one thanking you," he said. "You and Michael brought life back to this place. To us." Lily leaned against Grace, sighing contently. "Now we are like a real family," she said. "Right, Daddy?" Ethan's gaze softened. "Yes," he said quietly. "We are." The afternoon light deepened into gold, shadows stretching across the lawn. A soft breeze carried laughter, warmth, and the faint scent of blossoms. For the first time in years, Ethan felt that the world had finally come full circle. Not perfect, but whole. He looked at the woman who had once been lost, at the child who had seen what he had missed, and at the baby who had brought them all together. One night had changed everything. What began as an act of compassion had become something much deeper, a second chance, a new beginning. Grace rested her head on his shoulder as the sun began to sink behind the trees. Lily's voice echoed faintly through the soft air. "Daddy," she whispered, smiling at the horizon. "It is warm now." Ethan looked at her and nodded. "Yes," he said, his voice low, full of meaning. "It finally is." And as the last light of day wrapped around them, their small family sat together beneath the blooming tree. No longer strangers brought together by chance, but hearts bound by kindness, healing, and love. The cold night that once began with a child's cry had ended in the warmth of a forever home.